What is going on, investors? Hopefully, you guys are having a great day out there. Time to talk about Boeing, ticker symbol BA. The company just reported their earnings earlier today, and I've gone through them, and I will help you understand them the best we possibly can. We'll take a look at the sales, the revenue, the profits. Analysts are calling this a shocking beat after Boeing shows their first profit in nearly 2 years. And I was going through the numbers. I was like, wow, this is actually pretty good because if you recall, Boeing has multiple problems with multiple of their aircraft. So they've got this 737 MAX, they've got this 777X, and it all is either grounded or facing regulatory scrutiny across the globe. And they are working through that. But the beauty about Boeing's business is there's not a lot of competition. You can literally count their competition on like one or two fingers. So there's not a lot of competition, at least from a commercial aircraft space. And not only that, we saw this stock just fall off a cliff. This thing was over $350 per share. It fell off a cliff, came down to about 80, 90 bucks. If you got it down there, you're absolutely singing a song today because we have recovered and we've come back here to about $230 per share. Now, I've noticed some stuff from a technical perspective on this. Can we break out of this range like we've constantly done over the last year or so? We'll talk about that here in a second. What I want to do is focus on these numbers. Let's take a look at them. I'm going to zoom in just one more tick here so it's easy for everybody to see. Left-hand column is actually 6 months. It's interesting. They kind of flip it around. Most companies do the opposite of this. We got our 3-month, our most recent quarter here on the right-hand side. And I just want to show you, okay, obviously 2020, things were shut down, commercial aircraft. Not only that, it was like a double whammy for Boeing, okay? So we talked about how things were shut down, obviously the virus, those types of things, travel across the world, even domestically for the most part was shut down. Certainly business travel came to a halt. But on top of that, Boeing's like new planes were like in disarray, okay? So their customers, the airlines, the Southwest, the Deltas, those type of things, at least domestically here, were not flying airplanes, and nobody knew when they would fly airplanes. And on top of that, the new planes that Boeing had to offer were grounded with safety issues. So it was like a double whammy. It was no wonder this stock just absolutely fell off a cliff because its business just got like body slammed. But we are seeing evidence of recovery here. Now, I've actually picked up shares of Boeing. I don't exactly remember where I picked them up, because it's just too good of a story, honestly. And I love businesses like this that just don't have a lot of competition. We see here sales of products up nicely over the last quarter. Take a look at this. This is year over year on a quarterly basis. It went from $9 billion up to $14 billion. For a 6-month basis, still seeing growth as well. 23 up to 26. Service revenue relatively flat across the board. So we have our cost of products. This is a low margin business. This is why when Boeing saw hiccups with not only the virus, but with their planes being grounded for safety issues as well, the stock fell off a cliff because it just does not have a lot of margin for error. Take a look, cost of products on this $14.1 billion. We have to spend nearly $12.3 billion to make that money. Same with the services business. It's basically a loss leader. It's basically just a break-even type product because we spent $2.3 billion to make this $2.8 billion. Same thing is holding true for the sales of products and the service revenue. That gives us total costs and expenditures actually down on the 6-month basis, up marginally over the last 3 months. So they've done a nice job over at Boeing, and we'll see evidence of here in general administrative and research and development costs. They've done a nice job actually cutting costs and keeping them in check. That's in part, yes, we've seen some revenue growth, but they've done a nice job keeping cost in check as well. That gets us down to gross profit. They don't have it labeled here, but this column right here is our gross profit. It's our profit, our revenues minus cost of sales gets us down to $2.4 billion. That's on a quarterly basis. So off about $17 billion worth of revenue to only, and I say only because I've just done a bunch of tech stocks like Microsoft and Apple and those types of companies and Google. They flow a ton of money down to the gross margin side, and Boeing does not. They off $17 billion, we only clear $2.4 billion. So again, another reason why if the things don't go perfectly in the business, and if you get body slammed like Boeing does, well, the stock is just going to absolutely get clobbered. So you just want to be careful when constructing your portfolio. when you have stocks like Boeing, I think there's a spot in your portfolio for them, but just understand that any kind of hiccup in the business model, they are absolutely going to get destroyed because they do not have high gross margins. Take a look for the last 6 months. We had $32.2 billion worth of revenue. Only $3.8 billion of it flows down to the gross profit side. Now look, we got other expenses. We got general administrative. We got to pay our employees. We got R&D cost as well. That comes down to earnings from operations off $32 billion. Again, this is for 6 months, $32 billion worth of sales. Only, and I say only, but only 940 million of it flows, not even $1 billion flows down to our earnings from operations. And for the last 3 months, off $17 billion worth of revenue, about $1 billion flows down to the bottom line or close to the bottom line. We got to pay some interest and taxes and those types of things. If you want to come all the way down to net earnings, after you pay interest on your debt, after you pay income taxes, off $17 billion, only $567 million flows to the bottom line. So you better believe if you have safety issues, if your customers like Delta and American and all the airlines out there all of a sudden aren't buying planes because they can't fly anywhere, well, yeah, your business is going to be absolutely destroyed. Notice last year they lost $2.4 billion on a net loss. On a 6-month basis, you lost about $3 billion. You see, for the 6 month, we only net, that is $6 million. So you're basically break even for the last 6 months. But again, we're still seeing massive disruptions in this company's products. We haven't seen business travel come back fully. We still haven't seen passenger travel come back fully. And look, that might not happen this year. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm a medical doctor and be able to predict. I don't think anybody's been able to accurately predict the course of the virus. And so we have to wonder if maybe future restrictions will keep a lid on this business, at least for the next 6 months. We'll see what happens. But they've done a nice job controlling cost. Yes, they bled through a lot of money last year at Boeing, but they've done a nice job kind of controlling that to a certain degree. Now, in terms of the balance sheet, everything looks pretty good, okay? So here's was the beginning of the year. Here's current time. We've still got about $21 billion of cash on the balance sheet on this one. So that is absolutely fantastic. We've got a lot of inventory just sitting there. So when these airlines, if and when these airlines can start flying people, business travel comes back, well, look, you've got a lot of inventory there to sell these airlines and those types of things. We've got unbilled receivables, another $9 billion. All things being considered, our asset side of the balance sheet looking pretty good. Now, they do have some long-term debt. We had to pick this up over last year. We got $57 billion. That did tick down, but most of it just flowed up here to the current portion. Okay, so we took off about 4 here, but we added about 4 or 5 up here to the short term. So just kind of a flip-flop there. It is something that they will have to manage going forward. Now, in terms of cash flows, this is important too, to understand how cash flows, when you pull down a really, really tiny net income number, like basically zero, this is not $6, this is $6 million right here, because it says dollars are in millions. So this is $6 million. Last year, though, we were sitting at a $3 billion net income lost. That is for 6 months. But a company like Boeing probably has a lot of depreciation and amortization, right? Because they buy all this equipment to build these planes, those types of things. Well, they get to add that back in, and that is one of the biggest costs that they get to add back in. But we still have negative cash flows at this company. Okay, last year we were sitting at $9.5 billion flowed out of the business. This year, only 3.8. So, and again, they have 20 some odd billion. They've got some in receivables. They've got inventory where if these customers can start ordering these planes and flying them again, I mean, it's like two different things have to happen. They have to be able to clear these planes for safety, and then the airlines have to buy them, and the airlines have to sell their customers on that they're safe to fly. A lot of moving parts over at Boeing. I think you're still in a recovery stage for this stock. All things being considered, everything else looks pretty good. They did a little bit of a flip-flop on a refinance. They took out $9.8 billion in borrowings and basically repaid 9.8. So it looks like a refinance, in my opinion, there. All things being considered, from a cash flow perspective, things are looking pretty good. Now, one thing that you want to understand with Boeing is that I've talked a lot about the commercial airplanes, okay? And that's because it is the product that most of us touch and feel, right? We fly on airplanes, we ride on a Boeing airplane, and we understand the issues that, and obviously, valid safety reasons, and some of us might not be excited about getting on one of these planes until they've really proven themselves over a long period of time in terms of flying. But look, that is just one tiny part of Boeing's business. Take a look. Defense and space security just in the last 3 months is actually exceeding the commercial airplane business. And so that is something that you do want to keep in mind, that they do have this defense and security and space. And that is a business that is wildly profitable. Take a look. We've got our earnings and losses from operations. Despite a big bump, okay, we went from, on the commercial airplanes over the last quarter, we went from last year making $1.6 billion in sales. Now we're up to $6 billion in sales, but we lost $472 million. So that business is still not profitable. They probably have to, I would guess, double that again to actually churn a realistic profit. But the defense, space, and security cleared $958 million in profit off $6.8 billion. And there's a myth out there that if you have Democrats running the White House in the United States versus Republican, defense spending goes down, those types of things. I don't see it. I don't see a lot of evidence of that, and I don't see a lot of appetite for that over in Washington. So are there different approaches to how each party handles defense and security? Sure, but in terms of spending, we tend to see a lot of spending out of whatever party happens to be in the White House. So I like this business. You're getting defense and space and security business. In my opinion, it is allowing some runway for Boeing to get this commercial airline business back on track. Now, from a technical perspective, I drew some lines up here. I don't know if any of these make any sense, but we've had this big downdraft in Boeing. And then what I've noticed is this stock really likes to channel down and then pop. Channel down, pop. Channel down, pop. And we've kind of channeled down. And it looks like, like the pop can be confirmed, I think, when you break above kind of the bottom end of the channel. Like, I'm going to draw some lines in here, like towards the bottom end of these channels. And when the price gets above that, that is looking like, in my opinion, I mean, maybe you can draw it like right in here. That is somewhat confirmation that this channel is over and we are on an uptrend. And take a look at where Boeing is right at the current moment. Can we be right here? We're right here, and that could potentially mean that we've gotten out over this channel. Now, I think a real confirmation on that is if you get above 240, 244, 245 on this one, that is about $10, $15 higher than where the stock is right now. I think if it got above that, it could confirm that this downward channel is over and we could go on one of these runs over at Boeing. Now, I think some of that is predicated on continuing of the commercial airline traffic, right? Because that did help Boeing shedding these okay, last year, a ton of their losses, in fact, most of their losses came from commercial airlines just falling off a cliff in terms of demand. So we still need that to continue to come back. And obviously, if you're following the news, it is probably up in the air a little bit whether or not this virus is under control and whether or not people will be allowed to freely move around the world. And we'll see what happens there. Obviously, we all have our fingers crossed and hope those things continue. Because if it does, I think Boeing is an interesting stock. I got it at a lower price, not necessarily interested here. Although if you break out, okay, and the reason why we've seen this stock go on these big runs is when you break out above this channel, there's not a lot over here. Okay, this stock was like a falling rock. It like you dropped it off a cliff and it just fell and fell and fell. And so if we break up above, say, the top of this range here at about $270 per share, no, that's about $40 more than where the stock is right now. That's a good 15-20% higher than where the stock is right now. But you'd still have a lot of green space up above here. You could go from 275 to 320, 330, 340 on this stock without a lot of resistance, in my opinion. So you could still see some upside in this one. The other thing to do is realize that once Boeing's business gets back on track, there's probably some time to get into the stock when things are a little bit more clear, when things are a little bit more clear from a safety perspective and obviously from a virus, side as well. You might not experience as much upside in a stock like this, but you probably protect yourself on that downside as well. That was Boeing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. We'll be back again soon with more. Good luck with your investments.